Gonna learn today, you little fart sniffer. Hooray, we're back again with the Micro Basics with Microscope episode. Oh, we're gonna talk about cilia today. Are you excited, you little nerd? We'll be diving into what is the structure of cilia and how do they function on a really broad, basic level. We're not gonna dive too deep into it. Don't worry. I think first we gotta discuss what is a ciliate, or an organism that has cilia. So ciliates are organisms that fall under the phylum of Ciliophora. You guessed it. Look at you go. So essentially that means they have these tiny little hair-like structures that cover the extremity of the organism or in specific areas of the organism. Wow, so cool. But I know you're saying, Mike, what are cilia? I don't even know. Well, don't worry, I can help you with that. Cilia, singular is cilium, are actually tiny hair-like organelles. They're not actually different cells. So they're not multicellular, and I know, we'll get to that in a sec. Importantly, there's two different types of cilia, motile and non-motile. Motile means they move, so they can be responsible for moving an organism through the water, or they can just move fluid along a cellular membrane within a bigger, larger multicellular organism. Isn't that fun? And then the non-motile ones, they don't wave, you know? No, they don't wave at all. They actually just kind of hang out there, and they're used for sensory perception and input, right? Ooh boy, them sensing little hairs. On the outside, cilia are covered by the good old cellular membrane that we all know and love, but on the inside there's a pretty cool structure of proteins called the axoneme. It's made up of microtubules, which are protein structures, and they're arranged in a specific pattern, right? There's a ring of 9 doublets, and then in the middle you have boop, boop, 2 central microtubules. Ooh boy. But how do these generate movement? How do these get that little wiggle going on? Well, let's learn about that. Essentially, the outer ring of the microtubule doublets are connected to their neighbors using a motor protein called dynein. And this is very, very much oversimplifying it. But essentially, what these proteins do is they allow one of the microtubule pairs to slide up against its neighbor. And it kind of goes like this, right? So when this thing goes up, it pulls it over to the side, like that, so you get a little bit of wiggle. You see the wiggle going? There it is. What's really cool is all these microtubules will coordinate their movement together, so they give it a good wiggle, like that. Wow. Thank you, dynein and ATP. Forgot to mention that dynein uses ATP to power the movement. So again, the sliding, right? I hope the picture helps better. And at the base of the cilia, the organelle is connected to the basal body. Oh boy, it's kind of like the foundation and where any cilia growth may be initiated. That's pretty cool. Wow. Oh, Mike, but how do tiny little hairs move fluid? Well, I can tell you. So essentially, there's a power stroke involved, which is the actual movement of the fluid, so it's whoosh, right? And then there's a very slow return stroke back up to the standing position, and then it goes whoosh. You get it? Makes sense, right? You got it. Cilia have a bunch of functions, and we have them too, but we'll get to that in a second. But in single-celled protozoans, right, single-celled microorganisms, we really only see them for locomotion by waving in a synchronized pattern, all the cilia at once to propel the organism through the water, or to feed, which is creating a water current with those same cilia and bringing that food into the cytosol or the mouth via filter feeding or suspension feeding. So cool. Love it. Nerd stuff. But there's also probably some sensory input within some of the microorganisms. And it's not just single-celled eukaryotic microorganisms, also known as protozoans, that have cilia, right? We have cilia. Flatworms, planarians have cilia. Stenostomums have cilia. Ooh boy, even deltoid rotifers. Wow, where's all the cilia coming from? And heck, oh, Mike, I don't have cilia. I'm not a gross microorganism. Yeah, you are. You're just bigger. I'm gonna tell you about them. I'm gonna make this clear that I'm not a doctor, and I can't really get excited with the study of the human body like I can the study of single-celled microorganisms and gross goopy worms. But I know we have them in a few places, them being cilia. We have cilia in our respiratory tract, which helps move phlegm and foreign bodies out of our breathing tubes. Thanks for that. They're also present in a woman's reproductive system, in the fallopian tubes. Ooh boy, that's really cool. And then lastly, they're in the middle ear as well. To move fluid out of the eustachian tubes. This is a non-exhaustive list. Again, I'm not a doctor. You're gonna have to go to one of those body nerds about that. I love you, doctors. Thanks for doing what you do. So let's do a simple recap. Cilia are just like tiny little hair things that are on the outside of a cell, and they wave in a specific pattern. It's made by a bunch of tubes in the middle that kind of synchronize their waving back and forth like this by using motor proteins, which is basically like do stuff, sell stuff, right? Love that. And essentially, those little hairs wave in a synchronized pattern to either propel the organism through water or to feed by bringing water into the cytostome, the mouth. Why am I using that big nerd word? And lastly, they can also just be used in any kind of like organ that we have that has cilia to move fluids along. Really, tons of uses for them. Really unique to see, but that this has been conserved through so many different types of species throughout history. We all have cilia. We're all gross little ciliates. Why aren't we ciliates? I guess that's just because they're single-celled. That's when they're ciliates. That is what it is, but I think that's a little unfair. I think can we call ourselves ciliates? I don't know. I hope this helped figure out what these tiny little hairs are. This is a very broad, every time I make one of these episodes, I'm like, this is going to be easy. And then I go down a rabbit hole. Again, this is an oversimplification. This is meant for a broader audience to kind of educate the more broad concepts of microbio, what things are made of, and how they do. Love that. I hope you loved it. Remember to love yourself and love everyone around you. Support women in STEM and do everything you can to do something good tomorrow because you're contributing to a greater wave of human kindness. Always be nice to people. It's not that hard. And as always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time, you little smelly.